Okay, so welcome everyone. Let's discuss OT, or better said, OT security. But before we're going to do that, I would like to start with a question, a little poll around the audience. Who of you is still using this device? USB device. Yeah, it's actually quite funny. So half the public is still using it. But it is like a device which got the devil sign on it. And this was also illustrated by a colleague of mine at the beginning of next week, of this week. So I work at Exclusive Networks. So I'm pre-sales consultant. My name is Jetse Smeyers. So I'm not Stan van Hoof, as was displayed on the thing. So yeah, marketing made a boo-boo. But anyway, so I'm responsible for pre-sales, so we do trainings, we do consultancy, we each have our vendors, and it's from this pre-sales perspective that we regularly come into contact with OT customers as well. And so you will all know this. If you know something of IT, then yeah, you can fix every IT problem there is, and that's also the case for our colleagues. So we have our desk in the corner of our building. If there is something, and it doesn't matter what, it could be about, for example, SharePoint or whatever, you can fix everything. That's because you are a techie. And so this colleague came in and she said, well, I need to share some audit reports with an auditor. How can I do this? And she said, she started to answer her own question. So she said, well, I could use a USB stick. And then she immediately corrected herself and she said, well, maybe, yeah, that's not of this time anymore. And it was very funny because it made me think about this report which was produced by Honeywell. And Honeywell said, well, actually, in OT environments, we still use USB devices a lot. And would anyone know why we still use OT or USB devices a lot in OT environments? Access keys, yeah, but also one which is very important, there is an air gap. So we often don't have network connectivity in our OT environments. And so USB devices have the magic function to cross the bridge in air-gapped environments. They can be carried in, and hackers know this as well. So that was also displayed in the report. So almost 50% of the malware which was seen in 2023 was developed, was designed to be run from a USB device. So that's a lot. Attackers are focusing on it. Another finding is that a lot of these malwares were specifically built for OT environments. And so when we get into a discussion with our customers, we often get this excuse. My OT network is protected because it's isolated and air-gapped. So this report challenges this thing. So I think we can call this myth-bust. So in the report, we also discussed a lot of malware which is in use in OT environments. So these are a few of them. All these are developed specifically to work in OT environments. So specifically to work with protocols which are in use in OT environments, because that was also one of the findings. When an attacker gets into an OT network, they often use living off the land techniques. So techniques which use OT protocols, which are not easy to detect because we all use them at the moment as well. So there is also a lot of focus from malware on these OT environments. So I hope that everyone is on the same page with me as well. We need cybersecurity in our OT environments as well. Whether they are air-gapped or not, we need it. That's also what we see with our customers. The big elephant in the room now, how are we going to do this? How can we start by protecting our OT environment? Because it's very sensitive, right? So there is a lot of difference. We cannot just implement IT security solutions in an OT environment. And we have several differences. For example, when we look at the system design, yeah, the difference is OT, it's built to last. It's very stable. It can take around 30 years before it's being replaced, so it should be reliable. With IT, very short life cycles. It's easy to replace things. Some other differences, security concerns. With OT, and that's what they say, or what is being said, an IT breach costs money, an OT breach costs lives. So it's very important that OT environments are kept safe. So not only physical security is important, but also the safety of the process that it is doing, because it has an impact in the real world. We can feel it, we can see it, we can blow up a plant, for example. With IT, yeah, it's less sensitive. We can encrypt databases, but we won't see it in the physical world. Also, like risk. So in OT, and that's building upon the previous point, yeah, the risk is way higher because we don't only have financial risks, because sometimes the plant can go down, but also like a safety risk. If we heat up a boiling vessel to the maximum or above the maximum value, yeah, it could explode, for example. Of course, there are always safety measures, but in the end, we could do that. And this brings us to the next one, performance metrics. So OT environments, we often can't just install agents on the systems like we do with IT. So these are specifically built with also availability and reliability in mind. That's very important to take into account as well if you're selecting cybersecurity solutions for your OT environment, because they need to work with these values in mind. They need, or they cannot just stop communication like we do in IT environments. They work in a different way. And that's also for the connectivity part. So in connectivity, we also saw, yeah, OT environments, a lot of the time it's air-gapped. Make sure that if you select cybersecurity solutions, that you select solutions which can also work in air-gapped environments. So environments where we don't have any internet connectivity. That's important, and that's a major difference between, because in IT, yeah, it's easy. It's built around connectivity. So that's very important, to not just take IT security solutions and put it in an OT environment, because sometimes it will just not work. Also for change management, for example, in IT it's very dynamic. OT, yeah, it should be rigorously tested, so it should be a well-established vendor as well. With that into mind, we're going to start our journey for OT security. So now you could say, well, yeah, cybersecurity in my OT environment is important because, yeah, I could be breached. But I'm not convinced that that's your main concern. I think the biggest risk to an OT environment is not a cyber attack, but it's a lack of visibility. And that's because your visibility will be the starting point of your journey. If you fail at doing the visibility, then you will fail in the later stages to select your security products and to define your security strategy. That's also shown, for example, in some reports. So we have the RRC model, which is based on the NIST model, and it basically defines what you can do in an OT environment in terms of security. But actually the reason why I've taken this diagram is because it shows the current place of both OT and IT in their model. So they have taken an average, they have done some research, and a lot of IT environments are already doing the respond and recover phase, or are already focusing on that part of their model, which is the last step. A lot of OT environments are still focusing on the defend page. And there you see that defend is more about securing connectivity. Why is it so difficult to make the next steps? Because they have already done some endpoint protection, some network security. Security connectivity is mainly about securing the data flows between your OT segments. And the reason why organizations struggle with this is because they fail with their identify phase. So they know what is in their network, they made their segmentation, they know, all right, these are the segments, these are the risk scores, etc. But they don't know how they communicate together. So it's important to do this identify phase very well, because this will allow you to make rapid progress in your security journey. So how can you do this? What is, according to Exclusive, according to our research, the best way to do this feasibility stage, this identify stage? Well, it's very important that if you make a mapping of your OT environment and you are focusing on which modules are running over there, that you make like a list with all these values included. So we want to know the type, the model, the vendor of the device, but also connectivity information, MAC address, IP address, the segment, because segmentation is important. I know customers who still have a flat network in the complete factory. We often do not want this. Segmentation is very important to like create policies between these segments. So a segment is important. Physical location could just be easy for you. If you're walking around your factory and there is an issue with one of the components, yeah, then you just know where it is located. But also the OS and the software that the module is using will be very important in later stages, because you will probably know that we're focusing, or we have a lot of legacy devices in our OT environments. Things that we maybe cannot patch anymore. Well, we should be aware of that, because we need to have systems in place which can work with that. Also, Purdue model could be handy, because if you know the Purdue model a bit, it's a layered model which defines how communication between OT components can flow. So we have like 3 OT levels, and then the fourth is basically already moving to IT. Level 0 is like the physical layer, so it's like the actual sensors and components, and then we go above to all stitch it together. The thing about the Purdue model is that devices or components can only talk to the devices which are in the level above or below them, according to the model. So it's also easy, if you already have the Purdue model, to, in a later phase, build those connectivity rules, build those firewall policies, for example, to maintain and secure the communication between your components. Oh, sorry. Connectivity requirements are more focused on external connectivity, internal connectivity. Do my components need internet access? Do I need inbound rules, for example? Is there a vendor who needs to access his components? Some risk factors could also be like vulnerabilities that you know of. This system is vulnerable, I know it, I acknowledge it. Well, then you should make it visible in your identify phase as well. The thing also with lifetime, if you know, yeah, this will be here for 30 years, take it into account, because you know that in the end, for example, it can also get out of support, out of maintenance, and also, and this is very important, the criticality for operations. You want to know how crucial a component is. And we can do this with the IEC 62443 model. So it's basically a framework which makes a correlation between the components and the security level that we want to attach to every OT component. I will show you how it works. So at the left-hand side, you have like all the different systems in your OT environment. We have components, we have the systems which map all the components together and which do stuff, which make the processes, the robots and the sensors actually do something. And we have the policies and procedures to use those components and those systems. And every chain or every part of the chain is responsible for one of those things. So we have the manufacturing of our components. This one is responsible for the components. We have the system integrator. These will be responsible to build your OT system. And we have the asset owner. So these are just the end users, the companies, who are responsible to actually use and create policies around their systems. And you see that we have arrows. We have the security level, and this is the target, the red one, and we have the blue one, the security level which is achieved. So the asset owner, the end user, is responsible for setting a target. I want to reach security level 4, for example, for this asset in my OT environment. Then it's up to the vendor and also up to the system integrator to achieve this level. So you can also use this to, for example, make mapping. If you select certain vendors, make sure that these vendors can reach your level that you want to reach. If no vendor can reach your security level that you have set for a specific segment, for example, then maybe you need to change your expectations. So this can also be the case. And these security levels, they are defined from level 0 to level 4. And it's based on the impact of a breach and on the cyber risk. So if we drill it down, then we see that level 0 is actually not so important. It could be, for example, a vending machine with a 4G module. It's not connected to my network. They need external access, but the vending machine is only for buying waffles and cookies and stuff. So it is important to keep the people happy, but it's not important to keep the factory running. So we can give it a level 4. Security level 1 to 4, we can give it a level 0. Security level 1 to 4 is mainly for things which you care about. Like, for example, if it is something which hasn't got a lot of impact, you need to implement security controls against basic threats. If we go more down, then we will see that, for example, security level 4 will be able to, for example, shut down your factory plant. If a component is breached or taken down and it's in a level 4 segment, it could be that the factory should be shut down, and therefore we are going to attach a different security level to it because we want to implement measures which are capable of defending against high advanced threats. So you see the correlation between how we want to do cybersecurity and how important the components are for our organization. It's also very important to know that this is not a one-fits-all model. So it could be, for example, that in my factory, I'm going to map a security camera as a level 0 because it's just for watching who is coming in on the entrance. It will not put my factory down. But if the security cam is like watching a process and it is a safety measure, then the security camera can be a level 2, level 3, or maybe even a level 4. So it's very dependent on your situation, on how you are working. Now, we talked about the targets, so the security level that you want to have, and the security level that you want to achieve by buying solutions. How can we do this? Well, therefore, we can rely on research, and this is one from Westland Advisory. It's a scheme where they mapped all the OT security vendors or all the vendors which are doing something with OT and their capabilities across certain domains. So for example, the more dark the color, the more capabilities they will have in a specific segment. And you can also use this graph to, for example, define what security vendors you want to take up into your portfolio. And you have two scenarios. Or you go for best of breed and you select always the darkest color, or you have a look at the overall graph, because after visibility there comes protection, etc. So also for your next steps, it could be important to maybe take a vendor which is not scoring the best at everything, but can maybe go a bit broader, because then you can do some consolidation as well. In yellow, we have the vendors that we supply. I won't mention any names further in this presentation, but you can just use it to define your strategy as well. So we have discussed visibility. Visibility is key, because if you don't know it, you cannot protect it. Now, how can we control our environment? And to control your environment, you can rely on certain regulations like ISO 27001, we have NIST2, we have the SOC maturity matrix, etc., the NIST model. These are all used as well in IT environments as OT environments. And these are not there to post penalties or something, so people thought about it. They created these legislations to help you to increase your security. So I would say if you have certain legislations, and for us in Belgium, it will often be NIS2, have a look at what NIS2 is going to require from you as a company, because you can use it as a starting point. Have a look at what they expect, and then you can create your strategy around it. Now, one which is used way longer than NIS2 is actually the predecessor. It's the NIST framework. So it's basically, NIS2 was based on NIS1, it was based on the NIST framework, so it's a US framework. And they created like phases, the identify phase, protect phase, detect phase, respond phase, and recover phase. And they attached certain solutions to it. Like for example, for identification, you will need an asset management tool. You want to map your business environment. You want to do governance, etc. So this already gives you a starting point of what you could focus on. Now, there is this very, I would say, interesting graph. It's coming from Verve, and it's basically going to create a mapping between all these NIST categories and how difficult they are to implement in time. So that's also what you see. So the more we go to the right, the more difficult the solution will be to implement it in an organization. So you could say that all the things to the left, really easy. And there is one which is at the beginning, and that's also the one where we started this presentation with. It's the inventory. You want to have visibility. This will always be the starting point in every model, in every framework. It's because it's that important. So, and now we're going to make a mapping. What solution can you use for it? So for creating an inventory, yeah, you can use asset discovery tooling. And preferably in an OT environment, this will be non-intrusive. So it works on a network tab, for example. You often choose solutions. We don't use any agents because then you need to alter your OT environment. We often do not want this. Also, create network connection visibility. For example, if you have a firewall, you can already get some information from there. Asset management tool, compliance tooling. Then we can have a look at, more to the right, patching. If we know what we have running, we know what could be vulnerable, and we can already think about, yeah, are there things which we can still patch? If that's the case, yeah, you can do it with a patch management tool, or if you cannot patch it anymore, you could rely on, for example, your firewall and apply virtual patching like IDS or IPS in order to block certain exploits on the network level. If we then go a bit further, network mapping and connections, also very important. That's what was also shown in the ARC model. So it's very important to also not only know what is in your environment, but how do they communicate? What are they doing? So we can use tools like firewalling, NAC, privileged access management, and also this discovery tooling again to create this visibility. Endpoint protection, that was the second phase in the ARC model. It's often just installing an agent on our system. So that's also an advice that we often give. If you have systems in an OT environment on which you can install AV agents or EDR agents, please do it. Because often these solutions have like, I wouldn't say an OT mode, but most of the time they have like a mode where they only detect certain attacks, but do not block anything. At least then you know what is happening and what is being detected without shutting down your environment in case of a false positive, for example. Also things like, for example, endpoint management solutions and sandboxing can help you with that, to not only do it on a device level, but for example also on a network level to scan certain things. Network segmentation, I've categorized it as a quick win. Not because it's easy, but because you gain a lot of security benefit of it. So we can do this with segmentation, and if you have a flat network like the customer I was talking about, yeah, start with segmentation. If you already have segmentation, you can apply micro-segmentation. So basically focus on the device itself to define, even out of the VLANs, which device can talk to which device, etc. You can use firewalls for this as well, together with your switches and a network access tool. Then we have the identity and access management. Often, yeah, it's easy to forget, I would say, because OT is focused on the process. We have the components, what has identity to do with it? Well, often we need to log in onto those devices. And yeah, there we should rely on, what is managing this identity. So a quick win, for example, could be have a separate Active Directory for your OT environment. That's not a security tool, but it will gain a lot of security by using this, because then your IT and OT are not connected anymore in an AD level. It could still be connected in a connectivity level if you have a converged network, for example, but at least then you cannot use the same accounts. If you have an AD, use AD assessment tooling, or also focus on these identity-based attack detection tools. Like, for example, you have ITDR, but also NAC, ZTNA, SASE, or PAM solutions. And also don't forget, there is MFA, use it. If you can implement MFA, especially for vulnerable systems, please do. IDS and firewalling are used when we want to focus on network intrusion detection systems. So that's like, for example, applying IDS or IPS. You can do it with a firewalling or with a dedicated OT security tool, because we have a lot of them. And these tools, by the way, will also be able to help you with the identify phase, because they are very specific and they're very good at mapping OT-based protocols and communication in between your components. Network anomaly detection, NDR, network detection and response, but also these specific OT security solutions. Again, what they often do is they use machine learning to discover and create a baseline in your OT network and alert when something goes out of this baseline. They often can also prevent things, but in some environments that's not what we want. But at least then, again, you have the visibility, you know what is happening. And one which is often forgotten, deception technology. Because with deception technology, we often going to install a honeypot in our networks. It's easy to implement because we don't need to change our networks. But if something goes wrong, and we see, for example, that someone is connecting to an HMI, which is not in use, it is a honeypot, then you know that something is wrong. And you at least know that you should start investigating. So it can also help with alerting you on certain things. Now we're going to the very difficult things to implement. Things like, for example, all the things with data lake and machine learning. So that's EDR, IDR, NDR, XDR. ZTNA, machine learning, because often for these, you need to know very well what your environment is doing and how they will react to certain toolings like this. Because with machine learning, it's not like you have fixed detections and it will always work like this. Models are trained, so they can work differently in different environments. So there should always be rigorously testing before implementing certain solutions like this. And also one which I didn't want to forget, it's the people. So we should also think about how are we going to do security analysis. We will need to have a SOC, we will need to have a team which is monitoring our environment, managing the devices, managing the products, and also, like, for example, in certain regulations, you will need incident response teams, threat hunting. Often in these tools that we use for this, we will use natural language models to make it easier. So you can just ask a question, hey, can you give suspicious activity for the last 5 days, for example? So also tools which include machine learning can help you with more easily do these types of detections and analysis. Or you can use it as a managed service. There are a lot of companies who provide SOC services for you. It doesn't need to be that you do all these things yourself, but you need to think about it. So I hope with the information I have very briefly gave you in this half hour, you don't have any fear anymore to start this journey in providing OT security in your environments. And think about the visibility, because visibility is key. Identify phase, put a lot of effort in it, make sure that you go as far as you can get in gathering information about your components, because this will help you in creating your strategy. And with this, I'm going to end the presentation. So I want to thank you all for your attention. If you want, you can scan the QR code, which will redirect you to our webpage with more webinars. In 2 or 3 weeks, we have a webinar around OT security with our vendors Fortinet and Nozomi. So if you are interested, please scan the QR code. If you have any other questions, you can reach out at tag@exclusive-networks. And again, I want to thank you for your attention and hope to see you soon.